An abrasive defeat for KZN Premier Sihle Zikalala as he's ousted by former ANC Youth League leader and staunch Zuma supporter Siboniso Duma. The ANC in the province wrapped up its elective conference this weekend with Duma's Taliban faction emerging victorious and President Cyril Ramaphosa facing a cold reception by delegates as he arrived to deliver the closing address. Let's reflect on this weekend's event with political analyst Thabo Shole-Mashao. Mr. Mashao, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with the outcomes of the conference. Very interesting turn of events, and that's really based on the analysis we've been getting ahead of the conference. Many political analysts had said it was, according to them, a race between Sihle Zikalala, Nomusa Dube and Sandile Zungu. But then we had Siboniso at the last minute. Clearly, it seems like he had worked the ground and appealed to the members. Talk to me about this.
And thank you, Mfundo, for raising that, because that's a very interesting viewpoint. And many of us, myself included, I have to eat humble pie. I had thought that we are going to see the name of Sandile Zungu emerging very prominently and playing a critical role in this conference. And it just shows that what happens in the media is not often what happens on the ground. And it's a lesson to all of us to note that, especially in a conference set up, there is a lot of work that's taking place in the branches, in the grassroots level, and in that way, what's in the media is not necessarily reflective of the wishes of the branches. Having said that, it must be said also that conference is a very, especially the ANC conference, a very complex animal, very difficult to predict because there are variables, there are many variables and very many balls juggling in the air to comprehend all at once. And one of those is the use of money in conferences, which we've ventilated on this platform many times before. Another one is mobilizing on the ground at the conference site itself. So we know what happened in 2007 in Polokwane, that what was supposed to be a neck and neck was decided upon by persuading delegates who were already in Polokwane at the time. So such is the nature of conference, to have all these unexpected outcomes at the end of the day. But in KZN, this is very interesting because I think one thing that we all would have agreed upon was that the chances of Sihle Zikalala coming back his chances were very, very slim, simply because he was lukewarm. No one knew where he stood. At certain occasions, he was pro-Zuma. In certain instances, he was against the former President Zuma, and it was very difficult. So he didn't choose a side. He had an opportunity to choose his poison, and he didn't do that. And subsequently, he was punished.
That seems to also be the allegation or concept around why Nomusa Dube also didn't make it, that perhaps she didn't make it clear, she didn't nail her colors to the mast where people knew exactly what she stood for. Is that your impression of what happened, or what possibly could have been the reason that she didn't make it?
One of the reasons I think she didn't make it is something that cannot be purely verified by myself and you, and that would be the negotiations that often take place in the dark rooms outside, and in the meetings that we would never ever know about, and people would never come forth and tell us about those meetings. Those meetings are very critical because in the very last minute, people and comrades are often persuading each other and promising each other some incentives not to stand or to stand. So I think with Nomusa, it was a product of negotiations, clandestine negotiations that took place in the dark corners of in the corridors of the African National Congress members and leadership, who would have persuaded each other otherwise. But also, I think usually when people see the writing on the wall, some have the courage to take a back step, but also the delegates whom we often undermine, the delegates are very discerning, and they're very astute at times, and in many instances they know what they want and they go for what they want, especially in a big block like KZN. We know that for KZN, in this time around, they had to, it was a do or die, simply because they were previously punished in the bigger conference where no one made it to the top 6 in the ANC in KZN. So this time, I think they made sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed.
Then to the impact of the outcomes on the National Elective Conference that's coming up. It's been a great debate. I'm sure you've seen it on social media. Many are saying it will have very little impact. Others are saying, no, it will in fact have. What is your take?
It will have some impact. I mean, KZN is huge. It's a big block to ignore. As to whether it will have an overwhelming effect, that's a different story altogether. But it will have a direct impact in the national conference in December, and that is simply because of the point that I had just mentioned a few seconds ago, that in the conference, KZN will now insist that we do want our candidate to appear. When we negotiate with other provinces, we will tell them that previously we were not featured in the top 5. We want not just one, but perhaps 2 critical positions that we can take away as KZN in the intra-ANC politics. So the effect will be there in a sense that when they negotiate with other provinces, other regions, other structures of the ANC, they'll go as a bloc, and they will have a list of demands that if we are supporting you on this candidate, we will need support on this candidate. But also it's a huge pronouncement on Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the African National Congress. I think we all know it's an open secret that a bigger bloc of the KZN voting bloc of the ANC is not necessarily impressed with the president. We saw yesterday the songs and the howling here and there and the lackluster laughter at his jokes as he was trying to break the ice. That he's not the favorite that side. So that will be a huge factor for him. The president is going to consider KZN very closely going to the national conference, knowing very well that much of his support is not going to come from them. How does he persuade them and dissuade them from their decisions is another thing.
Speaking of that reception, what did you make of Duma's handling of that situation? Because I saw we had the deputy chair first attempt to calm everybody down. He had to come to the podium. He attempted. They continued to sing. He started another struggle song. They overpowered him, continued to sing. But he eventually appealed to them and actually went on to say there will be a forum to air some of the issues, but most certainly this isn't the one. What did you make of the handling of that situation by him?
It was a huge test for Duma, only a few hours after he's been voted the chair of KZN, and he had to put the gauntlet down and say, I am your leader, you need to listen to me, that's why you elected me. And it was a huge test for him, and also a test for what has now become cliched, unity and renewal in the ANC. He was trying to display that he will play a crucial role in the unity and renewal of the ANC. So he boldly took to the podium and told them, as you have said, Mfundo, that guys will have an opportunity to air these grievances at a later stage. Let's allow him to speak. He's come all this way to speak to us personally. And for him to do that, I mean, it was a test that he passed with flying colors, because that it shows that he had the grips of the conference, and he did not necessarily drown and want to be a populist in the sea of a huge anti-Cyril Ramaphosa sentiment of the KZN ANC. So he showed that he was a leader, and he had to do what's right, especially by the president, given what had happened a few days before or a couple of hours before with Paul Mashatile. And I think what I make of it is that he showed that he does have the handle of things. It's too early to tell, but based on what has happened thus far, it looks like he is a strong leader for that very powerful, strong region, which is KZN.
And then lastly, the step-aside resolution, it's back. They want it scrapped. Your take, is it really surprising, or it was something that was going to come up?
It was something that's going to come up, but I don't think that they have ventilated issues very well. The Forex issue of Phala Phala also comes to mind, and I'll tell you why, Mfundo, because they can't have their cake and eat it. On one hand, they want the step-aside rule to be scrapped off. If it does, and for whatever reason, the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is charged for that particular issue of Phala Phala that I've just mentioned, will they be as insistent on the rule being scrapped as they are right now, because that rule can work against them. And obviously they want it conveniently for their own factional issues. But also very critical to say, Nomfundo, lastly, is the fact that often when people have an anti-Cyril Ramaphosa sentiment, we often group them into the Zuma faction. Those who are anti-Zuma, we often think they are pro-Cyril Ramaphosa, and it's not usually the case. The factions are many in the ANC, and some are smaller. The splinters are smaller than others. But being anti-Ramaphosa is not necessarily being pro-Zuma. Being pro-Zuma is not necessarily being anti-Ramaphosa.
And that is really the tricky part about all of this, the other dynamics that somehow fall in between there. Thank you very much, though, for your analysis. That's political analyst Thabo Shole-Mashao. To the story.